You ever notice how warnings always sound harmless until they're not? People hear a time, a rule, a line they shouldn't cross, and they laugh it off like it's some bedtime story meant to scare children. But then there's that kind of warning, the one that doesn't come from fear or superstition, but from something colder, sharper, something that knows more than you do. And when the message is clear open before 11:55 p.m., suddenly the clock becomes a living thing. Every second feels heavier. Every tick sounds louder. The whole world leans in, waiting to see if you hesitate. Because hesitation has a cost, and timing is the one thing you can't negotiate with. It's funny, really, how people ignore the quiet signs, the soft nudges, the subtle pull, until they realize they're not suggestions, they're instructions. And when the night starts closing in, when the air grows tighter, when the hour creeps toward that line, you understand it wasn't a warning to scare you. It was a warning to save you. Warnings feel harmless until the clock starts tightening around your choices. People treat warnings like decoration, like background noise, like the little signs on the wall nobody reads until something goes wrong. They shrug, they laugh, they think, what's the worst that could happen? And then the clock starts moving in a way they can't ignore. Not faster, no. Clocks don't need to move faster to scare you. They just need to keep moving, steady, inevitable. Every tick a reminder that you aren't in control, no matter how much you pretend to be. It's funny how time does that, how it turns from something gentle into something sharp. During the day, the hours feel soft, harmless, like you've got all the time in the world. But as the night falls and the deadline approaches, time becomes a predator. It watches. It waits. It tightens around your mind like a pair of hands you can't pry off. That's when the warning stops being a suggestion. It becomes a command. And people understand what they should have understood from the start. Warnings aren't given to amuse you. They're given because something knows what happens if you ignore them. Something you're not ready to face. Most people never realize this until it's too late. They think they can delay, negotiate, play with the moment, test the limits just to see how far they can stretch their luck. They love flirting with consequences because consequences don't shout. They whisper. They creep. They give you enough space to believe you got away with it. And that's the trap. The silence before the punishment. The quiet before the clock takes what you refuse to respect. Once that clock starts closing in on 11:55 p.m., everything changes. The air feels different. Your thoughts get louder. Your instincts start clawing at your ribs, telling you to move, to act, to stop pretending you're safe. But by then, for some people, it's already too late. The truth is, people think they're immune to urgency until urgency has them by the throat. They think warnings are for the weak, the paranoid, the overly cautious. They think they're too clever to be caught, too strong to be shaken, too aware to be surprised. But the clock humbles everybody. Time doesn't care how brave you are. It doesn't care how smart you think you are. It doesn't bend for confidence. It doesn't pause for arrogance. It only keeps moving, pushing you closer to the moment you'll either obey the warning or face the consequences of your pride. And the consequences aren't always loud. Sometimes they're quiet. Sometimes they look like missed opportunities, broken timing, doors that were once open but now stand cold and locked. And the worst part, those doors don't slam shut right away. No, they close slowly, deliberately, letting you watch, letting you hope, letting you realize the exact second you ran out of time. People don't fear missing out because they lost something. They fear missing out because deep down, they know they were warned, just didn't listen. There's a strange kind of beauty in how the last minutes feel. The world gets still. Your breathing gets shallow. You feel every second like it's being carved into your skin. And for once in your life, you pay attention. You hear the ticking. You feel the warning. You taste the urgency that was there from the very beginning. The same urgency you left off. The same urgency that now stands inches from your face, grinning at your realization. Because warnings aren't about fear. They're about timing. And timing is the one thing humans always underestimate until it's slipping right through their fingers. You can almost see it in that final stretch before the clock hits the forbidden hour. People start moving differently. Their steps get quicker. Their minds get louder. Their excuses start crumbling. Suddenly, The warning they ignored feels like the most important thing in the world. Suddenly, they understand what it meant. Suddenly, the clock isn't just a tool, it's a judge. And the whole time, it was there, waiting to see if you'd move when you were told to move, open when you were told to open, act when you were told to act. Warnings only feel harmless to the ones who think time is their friend. But time doesn't make friends. Time makes choices, and it exposes yours the moment you hear that warning. Something inside you already knows it's serious. That's why it lingers in your mind. That's why you feel a chill in your spine. That's why the clock suddenly becomes the loudest thing in the room. Because the warning wasn't supposed to scare you. It was supposed to save you. And the closer it gets to 11:55 p.m., the clearer that truth becomes. People always talk about pressure like it's an enemy, something to fight, something to avoid. They treat it like a monster hiding in the corner of the room, waiting to jump out and tear them apart. But pressure doesn't have to chase you. It sits on your shoulders quietly, patiently, like a polite little ghost, tapping its fingers while you pretend you don't feel it. That's the funny part. Humans pretend they're calm, even when the world is squeezing them from every angle. They smile with their teeth, but their eyes twitch just a little. Pressure exposes the truth better than honesty ever could. You want to know what someone really is? Don't give them freedom. Give them a deadline. Give them a decision that actually matters. Give them a moment where stalling isn't an option, and see how fast their facade cracks. People love to say they work best under pressure, as if it's some talent, some heroic trait, a badge of honor. But most of them crumble at the first real taste of it, not because they're weak, no, but because pressure is intimate. It gets under the skin. It sits inside the brain and whispers all the things you've been avoiding. All those tiny doubts you buried, pressure digs them up and arranges them neatly in front of you, like a collection of knives laid on a velvet cloth. And you're supposed to pick one. That's what terrifies people, the choices they can't run from. The world teaches people to hide, to pretend, to delay. But pressure removes hiding places. It shines a light so bright that every flaw you thought you tucked away becomes visible. You can almost feel the heat of it, like a spotlight on a stage you never auditioned for. And everyone is watching, or at least it feels that way. That's the power of pressure. It turns your imagination into your own worst interrogator. It doesn't need to hurt you physically. It just needs to make you believe everyone sees your trembling hands, your shaking voice, your collapsing confidence. Pressure doesn't break bones. It breaks illusions. What's interesting is how differently people react when that weight starts closing in. Some panic, sprinting in every direction like frightened animals. Some freeze completely, locked in place by the fear of choosing wrong. Some get angry, shouting at the world, blaming every shadow for the storm they walked into themselves. And then there are the rare ones, the ones who laugh. The ones who understand that pressure isn't punishment, it's revelation. It shows you what was always inside you, hidden beneath convenience and excuses. You can't fake your way through pressure. You either adapt or you fracture. But the real magic happens in the moments just before someone breaks. That thin, sharp line between control and collapse. You can almost hear their heartbeat booming in their ears. You can see them doing the math in their mind. Too many numbers, not enough time. You can taste the tension in the air, thick and metallic like blood. That's when people show their true nature. Not when everything is calm and padded with comfort, but in those trembling, suffocating seconds when they don't have the luxury of pretending. Pressure strips away the costume. It rips the mask clean off. And what's left is the real face. Sometimes the pressure doesn't even come from outside. Sometimes it's the voice inside their head. The one that remembers every failure, every mistake, every abandoned attempt. The one that never forgets. You can silence other people, but you can't silence yourself. And when pressure wakes that voice up, it becomes the loudest sound in the world. That's when the spiral begins. That slow, dizzying descent where every thought becomes heavier, darker, sharper. People think pressure is about external expectations, but the truth is simpler. Pressure is you fighting yourself in a locked room. No windows, no exit, nowhere to hide from the version of you that knows exactly where to stab. And yet, something beautiful happens to those who lean into it. When you stop resisting, the pressure changes shape. It becomes fuel. It becomes clarity. The same weight that crushed you yesterday becomes the thing that sharpens you today. You start to see the world differently. Edges become clear. Noise becomes manageable. Choices become simpler. Pressure can destroy, yes, but it can also refine. Diamonds aren't created in comfort. They're created in the exact kind of suffocation most people run from. But the majority will never realize that. They'll keep blaming the pressure instead of seeing what it's trying to show them. They'll tremble at the weight rather than letting it carve them into something sharper. They'll keep pretending they're fine until the walls finally close in. Because pressure has patience. It waits for you to stop lying to yourself. And eventually, everyone does. People crave validation like it's oxygen. They wander through life clutching their insecurities like tiny, trembling pets, hoping someone will pet them, praise them, whisper, "You're doing great." And when they don't hear it, the panic that sets in. The spiraling thoughts. The sudden worry that maybe they're invisible after all, that their efforts go unnoticed, that their presence doesn't leave the impact they thought it did. Everyone wants to matter, but no one wants to admit how desperately they need someone else to confirm it. It's almost funny how fragile people become the moment silence replaces applause. But the truth is, most people don't get validation because they haven't created anything undeniable. They try to impress with half-formed plans, quarter-baked dreams, and the loud insistence that they deserve recognition. Recognition from who? From a world that barely keeps track of its own disasters, from people who are drowning in their own problems. People think they are owed attention simply because they want it. But the world doesn't work like that. Attention is a currency, and it is never given freely. It is earned, squeezed out, pulled from the reluctant eyes of others through undeniable impact. You can't beg for validation. You have to make ignoring you impossible. And the fascinating thing is how someone's entire identity begins to crumble when they don't receive the praise they expect. Suddenly, they question everything they do. Should they change? Should they shrink? Should they reinvent themselves to something safer, smaller, more palatable? People shapeshift not out of authenticity, but out of fear of not being liked, fear of not being impressive, fear of not being remembered. And the moment fear becomes the sculptor, the result is always the same. They become hollow, a shell built out of other people's preferences, other people's expectations, other people's opinions. They don't live, they perform. And nothing is more fragile than a life lived on a stage built by strangers. What's even more interesting is how quickly people forget that validation is fickle. One moment, everyone cheers for you, and the next, they turn away like you never existed. You can pour your heart into something, bleed effort into the ground, and still the applause fades. People aren't consistent. Their attention spans flicker like cheap lights, one surge, then darkness. So relying on them to define your worth is like building a house out of smoke. You reach for it, and your hands close around nothing. But humans keep trying because the illusion feels good. And illusions, when believed deeply enough, can control an entire life. Some people even bend the truth to get validation. They exaggerate, embellish, fabricate. They turn minor achievements into grand spectacles. They twist failures into dramatic tales of resilience. Not because they're evil, but because they're starving. That hunger for approval drives them to paint themselves larger than life. And for a moment they feel full. For a moment, they think they've finally earned the admiration they've been chasing. But illusions collapse eventually, and when they do, the emptiness afterward is unbearable. Because when validation is built on lies, you need more lies to keep it alive. And one lie becomes 10, 10 becomes 100. And eventually you lose track of who you really are. But here's the secret: people don't want to face the validation they want from others is actually the validation they refuse to give themselves. They can't believe in their own worth, so they outsource the job to spectators. They hand strangers the power to define them. Imagine trusting the world with something so delicate. Imagine believing that other people, who can barely manage their own lives, should be responsible for determining yours. It's absurd. But that's the trap. The applause becomes a drug, and once you've tasted it, silence feels like withdrawal. So you chase louder crowds, bigger reactions, more dramatic displays of approval. What people never realize is that the hunger for validation reveals something raw. Their fear of being ordinary, not forgotten, not dismissed ordinary. They want to be the exception, the miracle, the one name whispered in admiration. They want to stand out so badly that even their failures must be extraordinary. But the pursuit becomes a prison. They become obsessed with being seen instead of becoming someone worth seeing. They cling to every small compliment like it's a lifeline and crumble at every hint of criticism. And while they're busy begging the world to notice them, they forget the one truth they should cling to. Real validation doesn't arrive when you ask for it. It arrives when what you do becomes impossible to ignore. People love the idea of a spark. They romanticize it. This tiny flash that supposedly changes everything, like some poetic little flame dancing in the dark. But they forget what a spark really is. It's violent, sudden, unpredictable. It appears without warning and demands attention whether you're ready or not. And when that spark comes from you, when your presence becomes the thing that disturbs the quiet, people don't react with admiration like you might imagine. No, they flinch, they stare. They whisper, because now you're not just another shadow blending in. You're the light that exposes everything around you. Most people go through life trying not to cause any disturbance. They move quietly, gently, like they're afraid of breaking the air itself. They're terrified of being the center of anything, terrified of the responsibility that comes with being noticed. So when someone steps into a space with purpose, real purpose, the kind that can be felt before it's seen, it unsettles them. They don't know how to handle that kind of energy. They can sense when someone isn't drifting through life like the rest of them. They can sense when someone's arrival means something is about to shift. And shifts frighten them. Your presence becomes a spark the moment you stop apologizing for existing. When you walk into a room not begging for permission but claiming your place. When your intentions stop being whispers inside your head and start becoming movements others can feel. That's when the air changes. That's when the quiet cracks. And nothing frightens comfortable people more than someone who disrupts the stillness they hide in. They cling to their routines like security blankets. And here you come, igniting everything without even trying. The amusing part is that you don't have to shout. You don't have to boast or wave your arms or announce your arrival. A spark doesn't do any of that. It just is. It exists with such intensity that everything around it reacts automatically. People who don't want change feel threatened. People who crave change feel awakened. People who fear their own potential either shrink away from you or cling to you like you're their last chance. You don't even have to touch them. Your presence rearranges their thoughts for them. And the reason your presence becomes that spark now, at this moment, is because you've reached a point where hiding costs more than stepping forward. There's a strange kind of pressure that builds inside a person when they've outgrown the version of themselves they've been pretending to be. You can feel it in your chest, like something is pushing from the inside, begging to break through. Most people suppress that until they suffocate under their own potential. But some finally let it crack open. And when it does, oh, the world feels it. People will try to deny it. They'll act like you haven't changed anything. They'll pretend they don't notice the shift, but their eyes give them away. Their behavior gives them away. They start paying attention to you without meaning to. They get defensive without understanding why. They question you, not because you're wrong, but because you suddenly make them aware of their own stagnation. Your spark doesn't just illuminate your path, it exposes theirs. And nothing is more uncomfortable than realizing you've been sleepwalking through your own life while someone else is waking up. The interesting part is how your spark forces others to choose. They either rise to the new standard you unintentionally set or sink into resentment. Some will be inspired. They'll watch you move with purpose and feel something inside themselves flicker. They may not admit it, but you'll remind them of who they could be. Others will feel threatened. They'll try to dim you, silence you, distract you. Anything to avoid facing the truth your presence reveals. But sparks, once lit, don't shrink because someone squints, they burn anyway. Your presence becomes a spark because you hold a kind of energy that doesn't need approval to exist. It's raw, it's unfiltered, it's honest in a way that makes dishonesty uncomfortable. And people aren't used to that. They spend so much time putting on performances that when someone walks in without a mask, it feels like a disruption. They mistake authenticity for danger because they've lived too long in the safety of pretending. And here's the beautiful, twisted irony. You didn't ask to be the spark. You didn't beg for the role. But something bigger sensed the exact moment you were ready, and the world arranged itself accordingly. The air shifted because you entered it differently. The space reacted because you occupied it with intention instead of hesitation. The spark isn't something you create. It's something you become the moment you stop living small. People can feel the weight of something they don't understand long before the explanation arrives. It's almost instinctive. The way their eyes shift, the way their tone changes, the way they suddenly treat you like you're carrying something they can't quite name. They sense it before you say a word. And that's the strange thing about being chosen for something bigger. Others recognize the shift in you before you fully do. They feel the pressure around you, like the air thickens the moment you walk in. They don't know what's happening, but they know it involves you. And that's enough to make them uneasy. People notice when someone is suddenly set apart. Not because of fame, not because of noise, but because there's a certain tension that hangs around someone who's been marked by purpose, a seriousness, a gravity, like the universe is pulling on them more fiercely than it does on everyone else. And people, they're sharp enough to pick up on it, even if they pretend not to. They might not articulate it, but they feel the tug, the disturbance, the something. It's like watching clouds form before a storm. You don't need a forecast to know something's coming. And when people sense that your life is about to shift, their reactions reveal everything. Some lean in closer, hoping to ride the wave of your ascent, hoping your spark lights theirs by accident. Some step back, terrified of the responsibility or change your presence brings. Some grow jealous, angry even, because you're carrying a calling they wished belonged to them. Others become oddly protective, as if they can feel the magnitude of what's about to fall onto your shoulders. You become a mirror for what they fear they'll never become. You can tell they feel the weight on you by the way they start speaking to you, with hesitation, curiosity, suspicion. Their questions get more pointed, their eyes linger a little longer, their demeanor shifts just slightly. They're studying you without wanting to look obvious, trying to decode what you're about to become because even they can sense it won't be ordinary. They don't need details. They feel the pressure radiating off you. Pressure has a way of leaking into the atmosphere around you, making the people nearby react even if they don't understand why. It's funny how people pretend they're unaffected. They shrug, act casual, pretend nothing's changed. But change announces itself in the energy you carry, not the words you speak. People feel more than they listen. They might not consciously admit that they're watching you more closely now, waiting for something to happen, something to unfold. But you'll see it in how they pause before answering you, how they notice your silence, how they react a little too quickly to the smallest shift in your mood. They're reading signals you didn't even realize you were sending. And some will try to test you. They'll push your buttons, poke at your confidence, challenge your decision, not because they doubt you, but because they fear how real this shift feels. They want reassurance that you're still the version of you they're comfortable with, that you haven't outgrown the boxes they placed you in. Because the moment someone senses your purpose rising, they get nervous. Purpose disrupts familiarity. And people cling to familiarity like it's the last piece of solid ground in a flooding room. Others will start retreating, not because they dislike you, but because they sense the intensity of what's about to unfold around you, and they're not equipped to handle it. People run from what they can't control. And nothing is more uncontrollable than someone stepping into a path that was written for them long before anyone else recognized it. It carries a momentum that sweeps anyone too close into its current. So some will step back to avoid getting caught in the shift, not out of malice, out of fear. And then there are the ones who become strangely supportive, almost overly so. They feel the magnitude of what's calling you, and they want to place themselves nearby, hoping to witness the transformation, maybe even be part of it. People love to be close to power, even if they don't understand its source. They want to say they saw you right before everything changed. It makes them feel significant by association. Even if they don't say it out loud, you'll feel their sudden interest, their unexpected generosity, their curious loyalty. The most interesting part is that none of them know exactly what's happening. They don't know what you've been called into. They don't know what message has been placed on your life or what urgency has wrapped itself around you, but they feel it. People always feel it. They feel when someone isn't walking the same path anymore. They feel when someone is being positioned for something heavy, something sharp, something important. They feel the pressure before you speak it, and their behavior shifts accordingly. And sooner or later, you realize something too. The reason they sense the weight is because the weight is real. People don't like urgency. It rattles them. It shakes the comfortable little worlds they've built out of routine and excuses. Most people want warnings to be gentle, patient, polite, like soft taps on the shoulder. But urgency, real urgency, it doesn't tap. It grabs. It pulls. It drags you out of whatever cozy illusion you've wrapped yourself in. And when something bigger than you starts tugging at your life, demanding movement now, not later, not when it's convenient, not when you feel ready, people freeze like deer caught in the glow of disaster. They don't realize urgency speaks its own language, and it only speaks when something can no longer afford to wait. There's a strange kind of electricity that fills the air when you're being called into action. You can feel it in your bones before you can explain it, like something is watching you, waiting to see how you respond. You sense the shift in the atmosphere, the tightening in your chest, the way your thoughts sharpen. And, deep down, that you're standing at a line you didn't draw. One side is where you've been, the other is where you're supposed to go. And urgency is the voice telling you the line won't stay open long. Most people ignore that voice. They distract themselves with noise, routine, entertainment, anything that lets them avoid feeling the pressure. They pretend they don't hear the call. They pretend it's not meant for them. They pretend time is unlimited, that the door will stay open forever. Humans are experts at delaying their own destiny. They convince themselves they'll act tomorrow, as if tomorrow is some obedient pet that always returns. But urgency is not a suggestion. It's a message, a warning, a countdown, and the timer doesn't pause for hesitation. The world is full of people who waited too long, people who felt the pull, sensed the moment, knew something was shifting, and still stayed seated. They underestimated the seriousness of the call. They thought they'd get another chance. They thought things would remain the same until they felt brave enough to act. But life doesn't operate on their comfort. Opportunity doesn't wait for courage. When something needs you, it needs you now. Not next week. Not when your schedule opens up. Not when fear loosens its grip. Now. And when urgency finds you, it won't always be wrapped in beauty or certainty. Sometimes it comes disguised as discomfort, restlessness, anxiety, the feeling that everything around you is suddenly too small, the sense that you are being pushed into motion by invisible hands. It's unsettling because it feels like something has decided on your behalf, that waiting is no longer an option, and people hate losing control. They hate being moved by something they can't argue with. But urgency doesn't negotiate. It doesn't bargain. It demands. The fascinating part is how clearly the world reacts when urgency is on you. Situations shift, people behave differently, doors begin to unlock or slam shut without warning. You're forced to make decisions you've been avoiding for years. It's as if life rearranges itself to push you forward, whether you're ready or not. You start noticing signs everywhere, little nudges, strange coincidences, messages that feel too pointed to ignore. And for the first time, you see the truth. This isn't random. This is timing. And timing has teeth. People around you may not understand what's calling you, but they can sense the intensity. They'll tell you things like, slow down, don't rush, think it through, because they assume urgency is dangerous. What's really dangerous is ignoring something that won't stop pulling at you. The world trains people to stay cautious, safe, predictable. Urgency shatters all of that. It forces you into motion with the kind of ferocity that terrifies the people who'd rather stay where they are. They don't understand why you suddenly act with purpose, why you don't hesitate anymore, why you seem driven by something they can't see. They're not supposed to understand. The call wasn't for them. And maybe that's what makes urgency so powerful. It isolates you. It focuses you. It strips away distractions and illusions until only the truth remains. You're needed. Not eventually. Not someday. Now. And that now becomes the drumbeat inside your chest. A rhythm you can't unhear. A command you can't disobey because you know in some unsettling way that delaying isn't just foolish, it's dangerous. The moment urgency wraps itself around your life, everything changes. Not because you wanted it to, not because you planned for it, but because something larger decided the waiting period is over.